Our water connection acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land throughout Australia and their connection to country, sky, water, and community. We extend our respect to the traditional custodians of the place where you are listening. This episode is recorded in Ghana country and Wurundjeri Wurrung country. Can we redesign the way cities use water, not just to save it, but to reuse it, regenerate it, and make our communities more livable? What does it take to shift from managing water in silos to seeing it as one connected system? And how close are we to getting there? How can stormwater and wastewater, often treated as problems and things we want to get rid of, become powerful tools for resilience and circularity in our cities? Today, we explore what integrated water management is and what it looks like in action. My name is Jez Bordicus. I'm on a mission to increase your water curiosity, and this is A Water Connection. Welcome to this new episode. Thank you for tuning in today to this interesting conversation where we will be learning all about integrated water management with Celeste Morgan. Celeste is Arup's integrated water management leader for Australasia. She brings together a unique blend of skills and experience in environmental engineering, urban design, sustainability, and planning that gives her a unique appreciation of how water can shape livability. She led the development of Melbourne's catchment scale integrated water management plans and explored the potential of stormwater and recycled water reuse as part of the development of the Water for Life strategy. She was also recently named the Australian Water Association Australian Water Professional of the Year. Welcome to Water Connection, Celeste.
Thanks so much, Jess, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, this is wonderful. I'm so excited about learning from you. But let's start with the basics. For someone that might not be that familiar, what is integrated water management?
Yeah, good question. And I think, normal people ask me, why isn't it integrated to start with? And I think that's a good point.
That's a great point.
But I think to understand it, it's kind of worth going back to, I guess, thinking about how our cities developed and our relationship with water in that. And if you think about any city, ancient cities in Rome, Melbourne, London, Adelaide, we all want to be close to water. So there's this inherent connection between people and water. It's essential for life. And so we've picked these great places for cities, which are often by coastlines or waterways, and were often came to be because they were near a water source. So that can support a population. People started moving in. That created problems with sewage. I know where I'm based in Melbourne used to be called Smelbourne because of all the sewage issues at that historical point in time.
I didn't know that.
We gradually engineered our way out of that, created very efficient systems to drain that wastewater away, treat it, and dispose of it. Then we noticed, there's too many people here. We've paved all the ground. We're getting lots of runoff. That's causing flooding. It's causing pollution. Let's introduce drainage systems for that as well to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And in doing so, I guess we created for ourselves often silos or segmenting of how we manage water. So we had organizations and people focused on water supply, people focused on wastewater, and people focused on stormwater, and often different people focused on the impacts, so flooding and waterway health. That's definitely the case in Melbourne. Different organizations, and roles and responsibilities, they're all carved up and they're all kind of optimized for singular outcomes. So we've kind of lost that appreciation of how all of these things are interconnected as a water cycle, but also very connected to our places and how we design them. So integrated water management is really about thinking about those three waters together and how they can deliver cross benefits. So if we think about water supply, stormwater, and wastewater as a classic kind of Venn diagram, what are the cross benefits and how do they interrelate? A key one in the Australian context is water supply and how could wastewater and stormwater actually become a water source? How can we capture those and reuse those? But there's also a lot of crossovers between wastewater and stormwater management, particularly when we think about waterways. And then scooping all that up, we can't forget we're in places that we want to live and thrive. So how do we do that in a way which really celebrates water in place and enriches livability?
Yeah, no, I think it's a wonderful explanation. And like, it's interesting that you start with the connection with water. Like, all really human settlements have always been around water. And then the more we grew, the more we maybe brought in all of these other kind of issues that we needed to tackle. And then that made the siloing effect that we were mentioning at the beginning, where like different parts of the industry and of the society kind of deals with different things. Is that kind of the norm, like around Australia and around the world, of like separating these things and making integrated water management a lot more difficult, let's say, for start?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, I recently visited Singapore where they have one authority, I guess, which is responsible for all types of water. And Singapore is, a great example of lots of different integrated water management initiatives. I mean, they harvest a lot of their stormwater for the city water supply. They recycle their wastewater. They've done a lot of effort for greening in the city and naturalizing creeks. I mean, there's definitely still more that can be done. But I spoke to someone there to say this is all seamless because you're all together, and they said there's still siloing that happens within that organization, of course, as well. So I think it's still a challenge, I guess, to break down those barriers and just realize the cross benefits, I guess, of a lot of the initiatives that we can do rather than just focusing on a singular outcome.
Yeah, for sure. And talking about those cross benefits, can you describe to us what was your own kind of, oh wow, oh aha moment that connect you with this concept of integrated water management?
Yeah. I mean, I started out as a water engineer originally, but I actually moved away from that and moved to London and started working in the sustainability field with urban designers and planners who were master planning cities. And even though I'd moved away from water engineering, I found myself coming back to it and working on these plans for cities and thinking, well, that's a great place for a wetland, or let's regenerate that waterway because it gives so much back to place. It was so inherent. And at the same time, I actually came across Professor Tony Wong, who's an academic in Australia, who brought the concept of integrated water management and presented on that, and just rang so true with me at that point that I was actually so inspired by it that I ended up moving to Australia to try and work with Tony and others to kind of try and explore that further. But it's a concept that made so much sense to me, that why are we, you know, trying to engineer our way out of this when we need to be integrating with placemaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting because like you would have started from only one perspective of this salon or this three-way, thinking of the different waters, but then you worked on another sector related, but like not quite in the engineering field. And that
Mm.
opened the possibility to do that, which is very interesting, of really opening your eyes and knowledge to very different things that could spark ideas and initiatives that you have been leading here. We talk about kind of that siloed and like that separation that happens in different ways in different states in Australia. But like, I was just
Mm.
curious, what the structural or governance barriers do you think they still get on the way of this, of getting a little bit further with this integrated water management goals that we might have?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we've spent the last more than 100 years perfecting these systems which optimize a silo in a certain way of doing things. And that's kind of systemic within the funding systems. It's just systemic between the kind of roles and responsibilities that legally organizations are responsible for. And so we see it, for example, in Melbourne, a lot of the water authorities who are traditionally responsible for water and wastewater are trying to question what role they can play in stormwater. And there is, I guess, barriers to that, in that how, like, you know, water authorities and the way they operate, they need to kind of own assets. They can't just contribute to funding, I guess, for a stormwater harvesting scheme if it's only going to be operational funding. So they need just the way that their funding is set up kind of constrains their interaction with that if they want to partner with the council, for example. So they need to
Mm.
own part of the kit to be part of that conversation. So it runs pretty deep, and but I think there's challenges, I guess, to resource that collaboration, which integrated water management depends on. And I mean, Melbourne has kind of changed its governance structure to create what we call the IWM forums, which bring all those kind of water authorities together. So all of the councils in Melbourne, which is 39 of them, plus all the water authorities, plus traditional owners, plus Melbourne Water as the bulk retailer. And the commitment, I guess, from those organizations to work together to drive shared outcomes and co-fund things. And that's really helping to bring things to the table. But I think there's still that struggle to get the right resourcing, the right, justification to step out of the box that they've been in for so long.
Yeah, I guess if they have been in this grind of doing things in a certain way, and then as you say, the governance, the financing, and then just putting people all together to get that going. So how this integrated water management forum kind of came about?
Yeah, and this is something, thinking about the journey in different states in Australia, I think there's no one blueprint, but Melbourne's blueprint really started with state government taking a leadership role in that. I mean, I think it always has to be collaborative and it has to be on equal terms, but you always need an advocate, an organizer, and state government set in place a really key framework for integrated water management in 2017, which introduced the concept of these IWM forums and then went through a process, a very collaborative one, to get all of those organizations signed onto that, co-developed what they wanted to achieve, and now they're set action plans, I guess, and projects that they want to deliver together. So
Yeah.
it needed that, initial leadership to get things going and to bring everyone into the circle.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because yes, you always need a leader and like who have best than that than the government, the state government in this case. Celeste, I was curious, how does integrated water management affect people in their everyday lives? Like, maybe some people are listening to this, they're not quite in the water industry, haven't heard of that. They don't really know how it's touching their lives, even if they don't realize it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about, I don't know, maybe a childhood memory of your own or think about your own connection with water, I think we all have that deep inside ourselves. So we love being near water. It's calming. I, heard the other day that our sense of smell for when it rains is stronger than what a shark to blood in water in terms of the concentration, what we can pick
Oh,
up.
wow.
Like we have this inherent connection to water in the environment. We know when it's going to rain. And I think that's just a deep connection. So, but I think we've done our best to really dampen that connection over time, right? We've put all of our water sources underground. Things just come out of the tap. Most people don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, it's all
You know,
hidden.
things go
Yeah.
down the drain. Most people couldn't tell you whether that's a sewage drain or a drainage, stormwater drainage. They don't know that, things are going straight to the creeks in stormwater's case. So I think in a way we're really missing out on a lot in that connection. So it's more what integrated water management, I guess, could do for communities. A very tangible thing that a lot of communities think about is the waterways. Waterways are usually the canary in the coal mine that feels all of these impacts, right? It's
Yep.
where we're extracting water from, it's where we're discharging water from, and that's what communities see and feel, that degradation of waterways. But there's so many other ways we could be bringing water into our landscape and our lives to enrich those. And I think once water is missing, you really notice that. So here in the Millennium Drought, people were so mentally impacted by that when their sports fields were brown and dry and they couldn't play sport anymore, for example, when they couldn't water their garden. They didn't have that mental health and that well-being that's connected to water in the landscape. So I think there's a lot more that we can drive for communities. Once they have it, they'll realize how valuable it is.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is the case that sometimes once a problem arises is when people kind of get a little bit more familiar and like aware of the things that the industry might be doing behind behind closed doors, like little bit hidden, but we're here kind of providing an essential service. I was curious as well to learn a little bit more about, I mean, the cost of like taking on this other approach. We're talking that organizations and in general the industries were not fixed, but like used to working in a certain way and siloing those and in breaking those barriers and bringing all together. Would that mean that like investments and things necessarily need to be more costly, or when we compare to kind of the single purpose infrastructure or maybe more linear systems that we have at the moment
Yeah,
predominantly?
great question. And this is the challenge, I guess, in kind of integrating a new way of doing things against those kind of stock standard approaches of how we cost things. I guess the first thing is to realize that if we For example, if you're comparing a rainwater tank, which might deliver multiple benefits, to a traditional supply, I mean, that traditional supply, we don't account for all of the sunk costs that got put into putting those reservoirs in a long, long time ago. It's benefiting from costs that have already been spent. And so it's really hard to kind of stack up
To
against
compare
those
them.
things. So the
Mhm.
baseline isn't the same. But then we are also not very good at valuing the benefits that an alternative might bring. So when those are related to social or environmental benefits in particular, we're still developing that language and those ways of, evaluating those. It's definitely come a long way, and we can more and more put a dollar value on them. But, what kind of joy and autonomy does it give to a householder to have their own water source
Yeah.
that they can manage? What value does holding that water have to the environment? Because it's, you can put it back into your garden and have benefits for your garden, but you can also hold it back from the waterway, which isn't suffering from those urban flows that it would have otherwise. So there's a lot of less tangible things that come into that, which we need to do better as an industry to give the full picture in the business case.
Mm. And I would imagine it also depends on the scale of things, because we're talking here, you're saying like rainwater tanks in our house and like keeping water in our houses or in our properties. And then, or you could take a step back and look at it as a city. And we'll talk a
Mm,
little bit more about that after. But like
mm,
this is a very interesting concept that applies in many different scales, not only like at a
absolutely.
household level, which, I mean, we did have an episode earlier this year with Greg Ingleton talking more about kind of that
Mm.
household. And then we looked a little bit up into as well, but it's such a multi-scale concept that we can apply.
Absolutely. So it can be
Yeah.
house, it can be neighborhood or precinct scale, it can be whole of city. We can be thinking about these things, and there's different benefits you'll drive at all of those scales.
Yeah, for sure. And I was curious about the role, and you have mentioned it already a couple of times, of traditional and First Nations people in these particular areas as well, because if we're trying to kind of break those silos in and like really bring into the value of water in different ways, that
Mm,
might be a slightly different flavor of integrated water management that we take care of here in Australia a little bit more. We're learning to do it. So just yeah, keen to learn from that from you as well.
yeah, absolutely. And it's a space, to be honest, where I'm still learning so much from. And even though I've been working in this space as a practitioner for over 20 years, it's just really been in the last few years that traditional owners have opened my eyes to the kind of constraints that we in the industry even put on the concept of integrated water management. In my eyes, it's kind of now superseded by the concept of country, where traditional owners just recognize that country isn't compartmentalized at all. Everything is part of country, including us as humans. So often we, externalize nature or the environment and what good we're doing for that. But in the country concept, there is no
It's the
separation,
same
right?
thing. Yeah.
So the business case we were talking about, there's no need to like weigh up economic, environmental, and social benefits. That's just a construct we're putting on ourselves. It's, we're all inherently linked, and we should do what's right for countries. So I think there are some really strong alignments between the concept of integrated water management and that concept of country. But the country one is so much stronger, and I think that's where we need to be heading.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept. Yeah, like, and I'm also on that path of like learning a lot more about it. But it's definitely a very valuable way of seeing the world, where it's not as siloed, not only in water but in many other aspects of our society. Celeste, if you had the chance to redesign how water is managed in Australia, we just kind of clean slate, let's start again. What would you keep and what would you change?
Yeah, no, it's a really provocative question, that one. And I almost want to say I don't know, because I feel like we don't have the constructs because we're so ingrained. So if we flip it and think about it from that traditional owner point of view, I think that's a good place to start, right? Rather than thinking, do we need to merge organizations? That's still thinking in the construct that we already have. So if we, start at a different place and maybe think about the concept of value and what that really means. How do we value water, and how is water part of our lives and part of us? And that's, I'm not talking about money there. I'm just talking about that connection that we have with water, and how can we drive the best results for that as a community, and rethink how we interact, not even manage. I think the word manage water is quite controlling and kind of, it's
Already puts
working.
kind of like two levels. Yeah. It's like
Yeah,
interact.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can we become part of the water system? How do we completely rethink it from that? And I don't have the answer, but I think we just can't start in the place where we've already come from to answer
Yeah.
that question.
I think even when I bring up the question, I probably didn't go back enough because, as you say, like it's not a matter of like organizations or who does what and who's in charge of what, but it's like what are we thinking about the system in this way? And maybe that's
Mm,
a way that we could have done it. We probably can't just manage it from scratch and start again, but it can give us a little bit of pointers into what direction do we want to move. Um,
yeah.
I recently saw that you participated in this Australian Water Association event that was focused on circularity of water as a
Mm,
panelist. I only saw it because it was in Melbourne. I couldn't go. I would have loved to. And a circular water city seems to harness these kind of waste resources to enhance water security while reducing pollution and enhancing livability, which sounds like it's right out there with the stuff that we're talking today.
mm.
And that the event was like focused on analyzing if these should be kind of our priority in driving a circular economy. However, there were some stats there in kind of the information for the event that the progress is a little bit slow, with Melbourne being kind of a 9% water circular.
Yep.
So I was curious first, like, how did they get up to that 9%, if you know, because I'm not sure? And also, how do you think our cities could become more water circular?
Yeah. No, I do know, and I guess it's which the concept of circularity, I guess, I've been finding more useful in, I guess, communicating with a wider audience on integrated water management. And it's really, if you think about circular economy, and I challenge the audience with this at the event, is like what pops to mind, and it's probably around for the water industry around biosolids or energy from waste and things like that. But we often miss the biggest thing right in front of us, which is the water itself, right? How do we just create more circularity in our water, which is our resource that we all work on? And if you look at a city, the amount of water that we bring in as a water supply is always outweighed by the amount of water that leaves the city as wastewater and stormwater. We always have an abundance of water in a city, if you think of it that way. We're producing more waste, if you want to call it that, that's harming our waterways and our coastlines than we're consuming. So, and from a circular economy point of view, that's anything but efficient. Like we think of ourselves that we've designed efficient systems, but we haven't. We're only thinking about getting rid of it as fast as possible, right? But if we think about all of that waste that's created, and like circular economies would say, you need to be keeping those resources in the system at their highest value. So how can we be capturing those and reusing them to that concept of value? So what do we want to do with that? So there's opportunities for greener environments, there's opportunities for supporting thirsty industries which we hadn't planned for, like hydrogen and data centers, right? There's opportunities for more agriculture. There's opportunities for supplementing those city supplies and reducing our water supply needs. So if you kind of flip your mindset to a circular economy one, the opportunities are vast, but we're letting these resources go all the time. So I think that's, as a concept, I guess, a useful way of thinking about it to drive that. And I mean, Melbourne's done a lot and is doing a lot, but 9% just recognizes of the total volume that as a city we're producing. That's all we're accessing. There's so much more we could do. And as we grow, that's only going to increase more
Yeah.
stormwater, more wastewater. So there's more opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And in certain parts of the world, and even in the country, like it has been driven, that circularity and that recycling of water by need, like happens a lot, like in South Australia. Well, I mean, we do recycle some water, but it has driven by like, okay, it's just we're not going to have enough to
Mm,
actually supply our citizens and supply these industries. But this is, although it's the same outcome, is like another view of like, how can we be efficient about it and really call it like a cycle? We always talk about the water cycle. We learned that in the school, and then we kind of work on the urban water cycle. But the urban water cycle we normally do is quite a line. It's not quite circular.
yep,
So yeah,
yep.
definitely moving to something like that, which in a way it happens. It's just the environment is already there, kind of taking time and care of some of the stuff that we put in there by harming it as well. But we have certainly have a lot of potential into making it a lot more circular for all of us. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And you mentioned there, I guess, by necessity, we're the driest continent on Earth. We need to reuse to meet demand, but I guess there's also so much opportunity on top of that
Yes.
demand, right? What if we just see this as a resource that we can use and kind of switch to that abundance mindset, right? That rather than making everything less water, let's, put that back into our landscapes, give nature what it needs in terms of a water source, and put things in the right place and really think about it sensibly in city planning terms so that we can make use of that water coming out of treatment plants. We can capture stormwater in certain places and really make the most of those resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Les, what has been one project that you have been very excited and very proud of working on in this kind of integrated water management space?
Yeah. So I worked on a project in the north of Melbourne, which really, I guess, challenged what is the best development can be in this terms, and it's kind of a circular water city on a development scale, and like rethinking how can we kind of be completely circular or water neutral, you could say, at least generate enough water so to cover what we're using. And so we did that by standard recycled water supply to homes, which isn't uncommon, but also harvesting stormwater and putting that into the supply system as well. And there's a similar project going on, Aerotropolis in Sydney.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
really thinking about both of those resources and capturing them to also regenerate the waterway. So in this case, it was, a very sensitive waterway. So all of those outcomes in terms of removing stormwater from that context, it became a holistic business case as not just a water supply one. It's, going to completely protect the waterway and minimize that damage downstream.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic couple of examples, that of like those new opportunities that we have when we develop kind of new areas for businesses and for residential purposes as well. This episode is proudly supported by the Chris Davies AM Fellowship, an initiative of the Australian Water Association. His legacy lives on through this fellowship, empowering efforts to keep his passion for innovation and community impact alive. We're honored to have the support of this fellowship this season too, as we continue to share stories that connect us all to water. Now, back to the episode. Celeste, how would you explain your work to your friend or your mate that knows nothing about this sector?
Oh, yeah. You let me know that this question will be asked, and I'm like, oh my God, the elevator pitch or whatever, right? It's so difficult for integrated water management. And this morning I was like, I know I'm going to ask my child because maybe they will have like a good idea of what I do. And they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know that you won some award, but all I see you do is talk to your friends on the computer all day. But that probably says there's a lot of collaboration, right? Integrated water management. People tend to think about the solutions, and it's obviously about water. It's about community connections with water, but it's also about people and how we interact and what we do day to day. So a lot of it is around breaking down silos, bringing people together, and finding those shared outcomes. So I don't think I've nailed it, but I think I would say I work with a lot of people, in the water sector to find how we can bring better value and joy for water in our cities.
Yeah, no, I think, and you do that kind of that integration, or no, it's in the integrated water management name, but like integrating all of these resources that are separated, and you're there to kind of make those connections and make them intangible outcomes. So yeah, no, that was a really good one, and I love your child's description as well. It's probably what they see, like, oh, you just talk to people. So Les, what would be your message to young water professionals who might be listening to you right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's close to my heart because I feel like I started in the engineering sector and quickly left it actually because I felt frustrated that I wasn't in the right area or didn't have the opportunity to kind of change the brief. So just get given a job and I'd always be questioning, well, it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. How do I get further upstream with that? So I guess, and it's also really reflective of where I am right now, and I have a team that I love working with. So I'd say 2 principles: make sure that you're, taking value and passion from the things you're doing, and if not, then change it. careers have a weird way of, even if you kind of diverge, they kind of bring you back to where you need to be, to follow your heart in that regard, and just work with people that challenge you, inspire you every day, and make sure your working life is, a happy one.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I have to say, you're a very inspiring professional as well. Not have learned it from you in this conversation, but I have also learned it from people within your team that have nothing but amazing things to say about you. So, thank you for those advice and the words. And just to wrap up, why do you work in the water sector?
Yeah, no, I think it is a special place in the Australian water sector. I think there's a real welcoming sense of sharing, and I think that comes from, a lot of the water sector is public, and I think that's a privilege that we don't really appreciate compared to privatized elsewhere, which kind of means that sharing and that kind of comradeship isn't there. But I feel like, everyone's just really nice. I don't know, like
It is.
I think that's makes it such a great sector to work in, and that kind of collaborative spirit and willingness to innovate and do new things.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Celeste, thank you very much for your time. It was wonderful to kind of learn these concept that we probably, if you work in the industry, you have heard it before. If you don't, maybe you haven't heard it before, but now you know that it is around us all the time and it is part of our daily life. And we really learn how different parts of the country and the world are learning to really break those silos and think challenges, to think of another way, think about our cities as and our water kind of cycle in a more circular way, not only by necessity, but really by the opportunity and the abundance of things that we can do in the future of our cities. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And thank you for all of you for listening. That's all for today in our Water Connection. Remember, you can leave us a message if you click on the send us a message link on the description. You can tell us one thing you learned from Celeste today, or any feedbacks or ideas for new topics are also welcomed. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform and social media for any updates and new episodes coming. Keep your curiosity flowing, and I'll see you next time.